Hamzambo family, welcome to the Blackwood Financial 54 corresponding show. We do hope that you're doing fantastic on the 11th day of the month of January, the year 2021. This is yet another interesting broadcast where we get to discuss different issues taking place on the continent of Africa with the goal of getting to inform your perspective about the continent of Africa on social economic issues, political matters, as well as also other spheres of life right here on the continent of Africa. My name is Spikes, and in case you're joining us for the very first time, feel much welcome. We do hope that you shall engage with us on our social media platforms. We are on Twitter, on Facebook, and also on Instagram. You can always drop us a line. And in case you also want to write to us on email, you can be able to simply do so using blackwoodfireafrica@gmail.com. And we shall be able to respond to your queries, your comments, your suggestions, and everything else in between. Because we believe we can always make this particular show more interesting and more impactful with your input as well. We go back to music, but when we come back, we shall be going live and direct straight into the matters of the day. Because for today, we shall be focusing on a nation known as Mali. Yes, and welcome back to the 54 Corresponding Show on the Black Network Media for the 21st century. Thank you so much for being with us. In Swahili, we normally would say Karibuni sana, and I would say simply, are you all much welcome to the broadcast. Like I said, my name is Spikes, and in case you're joining us for the very first time, feel much welcome, and also check us out on the official website, which is www.blackfirenetwork.com. Once you are on there, please create your own profile on the network, and also engage with the rest of the family, because the Black Fire Network is a community of like-minded individuals who are about sharing information and also inspiring African unity for people who might be in Senegal, who might be in the DRC Congo, who might be in Kenya, who might be in Uganda, who might be in the Caribbean, Jamaica, who might be even in Bahamas, the US, Brazil, wherever you might be at as a Black people. We do hope that we get to build and engage each other right here on the Black Fire Network Media for the 21st century. Today we shall be discussing different issues. Our main focus for the day goes to Mali, because we believe Mali is a country that has not been able to explore its potential. And I do know that one of the things that has made this particular country stall behind is political instability and a political uncertainty in a country where we do have military coups every other couple of years. Right now, we did have some military coups in this particular country, and we have seen this country also facing some other different apologies about that, family. I was just saying that in Mali, what has actually caused this particular stagnation of the country is due to the matter that we have had political instability in this particular country, which has a very, very rich history. We all know about the man Mansa Musa. Mansa Musa is a man who actually originally was from the Mali Empire so many years ago, and he is the richest man to have ever lived and walked the face of this particular earth. But before we talk about Mali, I want to take us all the way to the Indian Ocean. On the Indian Ocean, we do have an island which is known as the Chagos Island. And this island was actually stolen from its people by the British and then later used as a pawn. You know, it was actually traded to the people of the US or the government of the US. And I want to share with us briefly on what has been happening with the Chagos Island. There has been a dispute, and this dispute was supposed to give back the ownership of the Chagos Island to the people of Chagos and also the people of the neighboring islands, because we do have so many islands on the Indian Ocean. For example, we have Seychelles. Seychelles is also another island country on the continent. But let me share with you briefly what is happening with the island, so that you can also get to have an understanding of what is happening with the Chagos Island. And of course, the US, like I said, the British actually stole the island from its people and gave it or used it to, or traded it with the US for a ship. And these are a little bit on the same. Let me share with you so that you can see what has been happening with the Chagos Island that was stolen by the UK. I have talked about the Chagos Island some other time, but you can also see what's going on right now with this particular story of the Chagos Island.
Is defying a United Nations ruling that Britain illegally obtained the Chagos Islands and should return the archipelago to Mauritius. This is Al Jazeera's Nadine Barber explaining why returning the islands is not that easy.
In 1965, Britain split the remote Chagos Islands from Mauritius 3 years before Mauritius gained independence. The new ruling says that was illegal under international law. Then in the late 60s and early 70s, Britain evicted almost 2,000 Chagosians to Mauritius and the Seychelles. That was to make way for construction of a US military base on the largest island, Diego Garcia. Decades on, many live in poverty in Mauritius, where the largest Chagosian community is based. But several thousand now live here in southern England, following a decision in the 1980s to grant some Chagosians British citizenship, and they've been campaigning consistently for the right to return.
We heard from one of those Chagosians living in the United Kingdom, who talks about what it's like to be in exile.
There's a bit of advert here, but let me just keep the advert so that you can also see what has been happening with the people.
Physically and psychologically, it is torture. It is revolting and humiliating to know that we are being made beggars of what legitimately belongs to us. We are being taken advantage of just because we are a small Black community without any network to seek help.
So Chagossians are anxious to return home, and Mauritius wants its territory back now. But Britain has extended the US lease of Diego Garcia until 2036. What is next? Here to discuss. In Grand Bay, Mauritius, Robin Madam Udu is a lawyer representing the Chagossian refugees. Here in our studio, we have David Vine. He's a professor at American University, author of The Island of Shame, The Secret History of the US Military Base in Diego Garcia. And Mark Rosen is a retired US Navy captain and senior vice president at CNA. That's a nonprofit research and analysis organization. Gentlemen, it's good to have you here. Let's start with some black and white photographs. Robin, thank you for sending them to us. I want to go back 50 years to see what life was like before Diego Garcia was Diego Garcia, and it was a little archipelago where people actually lived who weren't involved in the military. This picture here, talk us through, Robin. Why did you send us these pictures?
Well, I think it shows a totally normal life which they had there until the military base came in. You will know that this was in early 1960s when the States wanted an island in the Indian Ocean for a military base. And the UK said, well, be our guest, go and look for your island. So the American Navy went and looked for an island for their base. They found Aldabra Island first, but Aldabra was not convenient to them because on Aldabra there was a unique turtle population, and they did not want to disturb the turtle population. So they went to their second best choice, which was Diego Garcia, and they did not hesitate to forcefully evict the indigenous people on Diego Garcia and on Perros Banus, and we know the rest.
This is quite a vicious story.
And from that particular description, you can hear what happened is that people were evicted. About 2,000 indigenous people evicted from this island, which is on the Indian Ocean. Like I was saying, we do have many islands on the Indian Ocean, and of course, these islands are occupied by different people. One of these islands is the Chagos Island, which we are talking about. And before Mauritius was given its independence, what did happen is that Mauritius, of course, constituted the mainland Mauritius, which is also an island, and also the Chagos Island, which was also part of Mauritius. But they kicked out everyone from Chagos Island. The Europeans, the UK, the British, and also the US government kicked out everyone out of the Chagos Island. You know, people used to get from the Chagos Island and go look for food in Mauritius because it's nearby. But Mauritius, of course, it's bigger. But when they were trying to return back, they were told, no, you cannot get back into Chagos Island because now this is under the control of the US government. But it was given to the US government by the British. You know, there's this kind of thinking by the Europeans that they get to own everything in the world. For example, they would come up and give up something that is not even belonging to them. You would imagine someone going to your house and giving out your own stuff. It's not their stuff. It's people who are giving out their stuff, giving out your stuff. It's not their stuff, but they feel completely entitled and they feel completely under the control and ownership of these items. That is the exact kind of a shameful act that was done by the Britons, and it was given. They actually gave this island, kicked out everyone off the island, and gave it to the US in exchange for some sheep. I understand they wanted to get some warship, and the deal that they struck is, you know, they do not care about the livelihoods of these over 2,000 families on the island. All they care about is the worship that they were getting from the US, which is a complete shame. But let me share with us a little bit more on the history so you can get to understand what did happen with Chagos Island. And even till today, I understand in the 1980s, the Chagonesians were given citizenship in the UK, and that is where they moved to. But you cannot compare. If someone throws out of your house and give you another place to go stay, you will still not feel as comfortable as you are comfortable staying in your own house. So this is the exact same thing that happened to the people of the Chagos Island on the Indian Ocean.
In terms of how the Brits decided to get people off the island, they stopped them from coming back if they went off to have hospital treatment. They rounded up animals and pets and gassed them, and they starved them in order to get this prime piece of real estate. You're looking at what happens with military bases around the world. Is this an unusual story, David?
Sadly, in the case of the US military, it's not. I've been able to document around 20 cases just in the past roughly 100, 120 years, where the US military has forcibly removed local populations, usually indigenous populations, as part of the construction or the expansion of US military bases. So the Chagosian story is sadly not unique. Some people know about the people of the Marshall Islands who were displaced during nuclear testing, in Vieques, Puerto Rico, Okinawa, Japan, just a few of the many cases in which similar acts have taken place.
So I'm just thinking, Mark, you've been to Diego Garcia. Did you have any sense that this was disputed territory when you were?
No, I mean, the U.S. has had a long-term 50, the original lease term was for 50 years, and it was recently extended for 20 years through 2036. I mean, the U.S. is basically, I don't want to say exclusively a tenant. We are the major occupant of Diego Garcia. However, we relied upon the British government in order to provide us access to the base. And insofar as some of the items that were mentioned by David, in all my time working on base issues for the Department of Defense, I mean, we always tried to ensure that there were adequate opportunities for the local population, respect for environmental laws, and things of that.
That is actually a complete lie. When he says that he cares for the local population, it doesn't work like that. If people came up to your land and evicted you from your land, that does not make any. There is no place where you come up and say, I have evicted this particular person and I want them to get opportunities somewhere else, whereas in their own country they didn't have opportunities in that particular place. This is what has happened on the continent of Africa, and this is land that has been taken from the indigenous people of the Chagos Island, most of them thrown out of this island. And it's really, really a shame to see that this is still going on, and the lease has been extended because the UK gave a lease to the US government, and right now they are leasing this particular property. And even if it's not really actually property, it's the land of the people, and this is what is happening in their own country. Check it out.
And we spent a lot of money on it. Now, obviously, the standards that were back in the 1960s were probably different than those today. And so in the case of Diego Garcia, I think we need to rethink exactly in terms of the U.S. relationship with Mauritius and the displaced people and their descendants. We need to rethink on how we're going to deal with that.
Robin, what occurred to me was the pain with which either the descendants or actually people who still remember living on the Chagos Islands, the pain with which they remember where they came from, that it was such a beautiful place for them. I want you to have a listen to Olivier here, and he puts that into words every time I hear somebody who's from the Chagos Islands about what they're missing, why they want to go back home. Have a listen to him.
The UK government, who present themselves as champion of human rights, banish the fundamental rights of our people. How could we accept that other people can live on our birthplace, whereas we, as native, we cannot do so? And at the same time, we have our parade who buried in Chagos, which we don't have access.
That's a little bit of what is happening in the Chagos Island, and my video is taking a second to buffer, but nonetheless, you can hear from them. They want to present, the UK and the US presents themselves as the champions of human rights. But how could you be a champion?
Come here onto my laptop. This is a tweet from Marie Sabrina Jean. Sabrina Jean was going to join us today. Unfortunately, she had to work, so I'm going to bring in some of her social media. She says Chagos is not for the UK. It's not for the USA. Chagos is for Chagosians. It's time for the UK to give us our paradise island. Robin, you've been trying to do that. How much ground are you making right now? How close is it to being Chagos for Chagosians?
Well, I think it's pretty simple, but it's just made complicated by the shameful refusal of the United Kingdom and the United States of America to comply with the rule of law. Before the 25th February 2019, that is before the ruling of the International Court of Justice, well, Mauritius had claims, the Chagos Islanders had claims. But no more. These are no more claims. There is the highest court of law in this world that has ruled that the UK's continuing occupation is unlawful. that UK must bring an end to its occupation and must return the indigenous people there, and that this right is an erga omnes right. Every state, every country must help in putting an end in this. So this is not a claim. This is not an allegation.
What I would actually say is that on the continent we have lacked unity, and therefore that is why when Mauritius is struggling to get this island back, and also when the Chagosians are struggling to get this island back, they have not been able to do so because they are a weak group. If you're not united, you are weak. But if you're not united, you are weak. But when you are united, you're actually strong. And therefore, that is why you do see this kind of struggle by the people of the Chagosians to be able to get back their island, because the UK kicked them out and also give it to the US. And the US was given this particular piece of island for a lease of 50 years. And recently, as 2019, they extended this particular lease for another extra 20 years. And therefore, it means that the people still continue to live in inhumane conditions simply because they were kicked out and cannot go back to their own homes. Let me continue sharing a little bit more of the same before we get back into more matters. But you can see the champions of human rights, the UK, will speak on human rights anywhere else in their own country and in their own conduct of affairs. They have no regard for human rights. In the US as well, the US sells itself as a country which is governed on the basis of human rights and a respect for human rights. But you can see they have no regard or any respect for the human life or the human rights in the Chagos Islands, where they kicked out everyone just to make a military base. And I believe even for those 50 years, this military base has not been any instrumental in terms of getting to serve as an advantage to them. I know they print the fiat paper money, and if you are in control of the money, you are in control of everything else. But the UN, which is the UN, decided that they have decided to make it illegal for the UK to have the control or the ownership of this island and return it to its indigenous people. But that did not actually happen. Let me share you with more of the same. And you can see here the opinion from this particular panel here. Most of which, apart from this guy here, even for him, he does not really see this happening, the return of this Chagos Island, the people who are the black people, the indigenous black people from whom the island was stolen and they were thrown out of this small island. There are many islands on the Indian Ocean, like I said. First and foremost, I do not believe this island, I do not believe this ocean should be known as Indian Ocean, because it's not an ocean for the Indians. It's actually off. It should be the African Ocean, but I will not have the African Ocean simply because there is also the matter of a soft power at hand playing here. But let me continue playing more on the same so you can also get to understand what we are talking about with the stealing of this island by the UK.
This is the rule of law. This is a declaration of law. I mean, I still remember when Catalonia claimed independence, Theresa May went online and said Catalonia has to comply with the rule of law. Well, I'm sorry, Mrs. May. It's your turn now to comply with the rule of law.
Well, Robin, this is Mark. I too am an international lawyer, and a couple of points. And I want to reinforce what I said earlier, that the United States needs to perhaps take a leading role in trying to address the concerns of the displaced Chagosians and work with the Mauritian government to try to come up with a reasonable accommodation. And I would agree with you that there was a...
This is very, very much hypocritical. So someone throws you out of your house and then comes up and says, we need to have an agreement where you can have a reasonable accommodation. How about you just give me back my land? But also I do believe that this is something that has been done by the UK government because they feel entitled. And they also do disregard any kind of rule by the United Nations to return this land to their rightful owners. But I do know that this is actually done because the US, the UK, and also the people at the top who run these two governments and the whole world government, they have the backing. The UK has a backing of them. The US has a backing of them. In as much as just a PR, where you do say the United Nations has argued or has ordered the return of this island to the owners. But nonetheless, it's a whole nonsense going on with this a Navy official, former Navy official, who believes that he can offer reasonable accommodation after he has stolen the land, which is crazy. It does not make any sense in terms of even from a moral perspective, from a logical perspective, it doesn't make any kind of a sense. But nonetheless, you'll hear the nonsense going on with this. This is a 54 corresponding show on the Black Fire Network, in case you forgot. And we are talking about Chagos Island. Chagos Island is an island off an island off the Indian Ocean, and of course on the Indian Ocean, off the East African coast, where we do have Seychelles, and also far right we do have Mauritius, and then from there also on the east of Mauritius we do have the Chagos Island. And what did happen with colonization is that almost every other piece of land, even on the islands were taken by either the British or the French. And the British and the French have used these different islands and excluded the people of these different islands, in most cases even exterminating them. You remember in Australia, the original Tasmanians were exterminated, they were killed. So even for this small Chagos Island, I am yet to find out, in terms of kicking out these people, of course not everyone left in their will, so I am sure many people are also killed, but that is not documented. I am sure when it comes to the French also taking up these different islands off the continent of Africa, they also killed many people. That information has not come out. It has also not to come out how these particular people get back their land. It's just a matter of going round and round the matter and just wasting more time doing a whole lot of nothing. And even if the UN has given an order, this order is not to be followed. But let's continue the same.
Lancaster Agreement that was negotiated in 1965 that granted rights to Mauritius, to fisheries, to mineral rights, and a variety of other things. And I don't believe that agreement has been fully honored. And in fact, there was an arbitration over the UK's designation of a marine protected area that so much as reinforced that point, that all terms in the Lancaster Agreement were not met. However, an important point is that is an international legal tribunal that did not say that the UK's continued occupation of the Chagos was illegal. And now we have an advisory opinion that says that it is that the detachment was improper. So I mean, yeah, so I would say that the United States and the UK have acted in good faith up to now, and now
you would.
Good faith in terms of their legal.
That's a complete lie. There is nothing like a good faith. You might use all these nice flowery words, but you'd be talking about good faith in the Chagos Island. That's a complete lie. Let me tell you what happened in the Chagos Island. What happened in the Chagos Island is that people left to go look for food. People left to go look for resources. And when they came back, the UK had already thrown them out. These are Africans, indigenous Africans who used to run this particular it's not a country, it's an island. But they were thrown out of their own island. It was taken by the UK, and then the UK used it as a vantage point. The UK used it as a chip. They said if the US would actually afford us some warships, we can actually give this island on a lease if you will actually agree to give us a warship. And the warship was actually, I believe it was traded. Let me see if I can actually get some of this particular video or the warship that was traded between the US and the UK. For the same purpose, right here on the 54 corresponding show with the Black Fire Network. Let me see if I can get that particular ship. Let me show you what is the kind of atrocities that have been done on the African continent. And people talk about reparations, people talk about compensation, but if you have lost 70 years, you have been thrown out of your house for 70 years, there is no any amount of money that you can pay and telling me this is a compensation. But let me see the UK gets warship in exchange for Chagos Island. Let me see if I can actually show you what was actually exchanged in regards to the same by the UK. Let me see. I wish I was able to share with you the warship. And you can also see a lot of things, a lot of information has been put out on the media, including this particular presentation on a TED Talk And I was just saying, this is time for the US to relinquish the control of the Chagos Island, and also relinquish the control of and the ownership over this particular island. Let me show you what was happening with that. You can also get to understand, and maybe perhaps you might agree with me that power actually is what we as African people are lacking. Let me just these are right to go home. Let me share this.
On 15 February 1964, in the middle of the Indian Ocean, a place called Peros Banos, situated in the Chagos archipelagos, I was born. Life was very peaceful, and everyone worked in copra industries. We have our own house, we have our culture, we have our tradition, and we all live as one family. It was a very wonderful and peaceful place. In 1968, my sister Noeli, who was 1.5 years, had been hurt by a wheel cart. When my mom go to the dispensary in Peros Banos, she had been told by the nurse that she had to travel to Mauritius to have better treatment for my sister. Both mom and dad decided to go to Mauritius to have treatment for my sister, but in a view to return back to Chagos, because all our belongings we have left on Chagos. It was a decision taken by both my mom and my dad. In 1968, we traveled to Mauritius. Arriving in Mauritius, my sister was admitted in the hospital. And fortunately, 3 months after, my sister passed away. When mom and dad decided to return, I remember I was with my mom going to an office in the center of Port Louis, where we go to register our name to return back to Chagos. And I still remember the key of the padlock was in the pocket of my father. When my mom asked the officer that we want to return now, and she had been told by the officer that it will be impossible for her to return because the island had been given to America to build a US military base. It was a shock for my family to face this kind of life, facing with problems like drugs, alcohol, and prostitution, even jobless and bad education. We were forcibly tried to live on our birthplace, but unfortunately, we cannot. I remember my father got a stroke, and suddenly my mom had to work in 5 different places in order to feed the family.
This is crazy because now the mom has to work in 5 different jobs. Maybe one of them is actually tending to some other children in some other rich person's home, maybe getting to wash clothes for some other different people, maybe getting to tend to it's crazy. But what has happened is that the Chagos Island was actually taken from the indigenous people. And this is actually a story of one individual who shares his experience. Having been born in the island in 1962, by the time you go to 8 years in 1968, this island was actually being given. You know, the British actually took it over, and they said we have something we can give the US for them to actually give us the military warships. And they said that what we can trade with you in order for you to give us military warships is actually an island. First and foremost, you have to realize this island is not their own island. This is an island where they have kicked out everyone from the island and then taken it over and then traded it with the US in exchange for something else. And now, of course, if we're talking about the disregard for human rights, it does not get any sicker than this. It does not get any worse than this. The disregard for human rights, where someone can come up and take your own houses and use your house to exchange to get something else they need, or as they're taking up your own house. But once again, when you go back to African power, we do realize that on the continent of Africa, we as an African people, as a Black people, have not had power for the last about 400 or 500 years. And therefore, that is why a European would come from the UK, take up your house and give it to someone else in exchange for another service that they want. But these are stories that you will not hear on any other platforms. But on the 54 Corresponding Show, we always strive to bring you this story so you can also get to understand the wickedness of these European and the levels that they will go to make sure that they will achieve their clinging onto power, and also they will achieve domination over African people. This is really, really sad. This is from Diego Garcia. Diego Garcia is in Chagos Island, and this is how the story went. People are thrown out. For example, for him, you could hear his father and mother took his sister to Mauritius because Mauritius has better hospitals than the Chagos Island. But when you want to return, the sister had died. But when they wanted to go back home and return, they were told, no, you cannot go back home. You have the padlock. You have the keys to the padlock at home, but you cannot cross over from Mauritius, go back to your archipelago, simply because it's owned and controlled by the US right now, which is the saddest part.
My sister worked as babysitter, and we were still at primary school. After school hours, we have to go to the cemetery to sell water. Life was very difficult for us to face this because the main job which exists on Chagos did not exist in Mauritius. In 1973, the last group of Sagosians were forcibly removed from Chagos in order to make place for a US military base. We do understand that it was a plan for both government, UK and US, to remove all the inhabitants of Chagos in order to make place for US military base. Arriving in Mauritius, many were dumped in the slum of Port Louis. I still remember that some have to stay 3 days on the harbor. But the Sagosian women was very strong. They want their voice to be heard. They cannot accept that their children go to bed without having anything to eat. They started by demonstration, anger strike.
From what you see on this particular image is that these are the forced evictions of the Chagosians from the island, put on these vehicles and then transported from this island into Mauritius. And also, anyhow, in as much as you might think about wickedness of the Europeans, the wickedness also of the US government, I fail to understand. For me, I think I fail to understand how it is that the US government talks about the respect for human rights and continue with their lease, because the UK government gave a lease of 50 years. And this was a lease given to the US government so they can have a military base in Diego Garcia, which is a small island on the Indian Ocean. And this is an island where people are thrown out. You cannot return. If you left and you're trying to get something, you cannot return to this particular island. So what happened eventually is that everyone was thrown out of this island. And these are people who had families. These are people who did have their cultures. These are people who did have their own language. And when they were thrown out, as recent as 2019, the lease was supposed to end, I believe, in 2019, but they added another extra 20 years on the lease. So the lease is supposed to end in 2039. And this is the UK government, this is the US government, and the UK government are actually working very, very closely to make sure that these people also do not return. Because of the guilt, because of the guilt and remorse, the UK government gave citizenship to some of the individuals thrown out of the island. But I was saying a little bit earlier on that if you threw me out of my house and gave me another place to go stay, I would not be as comfortable. And I would also say that the Chagosians also ought to have fought. But what we know from the 1960s, the whole island, I bet, would have been bombed. And let me share a little bit more on the same, because you can understand the atrocities that were done against the Chagosians. The Chagos Island is a small island. It's actually on the Indian Ocean. And this is what has happened with it. And it's very, very, very sad.
This video was made possible by Curiosity.
Let me share these with you.
Countries and territories across the world. Most of these bases were acquired after World War II, when traditional colonial powers such as Great Britain and France were in the midst of decolonization. While all of these bases hold significant strategic importance to the United States military, few hold as much importance or secrecy as the tiny island of Diego Garcia, or are as involved in so much controversy. Diego Garcia is a coral atoll and the largest and southernmost member of the Chagos archipelago.
This is where you do find it. We do have Mauritius, and then after that, we do have, this is Diego Garcia. This is also part of the Chagos Island. This is Diego Garcia, the Chagos Island, and also we do have our Mauritius as well. Let me continue sharing at the same. It's an archipelago. The Chagos, this is a Chagos archipelago. The Chagos is not really one, it's a combination, just like we have Japan or China being in parts.
Located in the central Indian Ocean, this area is home to over 1,000 individual islands and is composed of 7 distinct atolls. Diego Garcia itself is a narrow strip of land that measures 63 kilometers in length and nearly encloses a lagoon that is 21 kilometers long and up to 10 kilometers wide at its widest point. This open access to the lagoon on the north end of the island allows for easy access to the naval port for inbound and outbound ships delivering supplies and personnel. Although cars on the island drive on the right side of the road, this island is not considered American soil. You may be surprised to find out that Diego Garcia is actually one of the final colonial remnants of the British Empire. The United Kingdom today considers the island a member of the British Indian Ocean Territory, which is comprised of the entire Chagos Island chain. The island was first discovered by Diego Garcia de Moguer of Spain before becoming a French
But if you look at this, when they call it Diego Garcia, and Diego was an explorer, a French explorer, there is no way. If someone comes up to your house and say, "Oh, I didn't know about this house, so now I ought to name it this particular name or that particular name," there were people existing in Chagos Island. There were people existing in Diego Garcia before Diego Garcia passed by, and these were the indigenous communities. But they have been thrown out. All of them been thrown out of the island for it to be for them to create this military base. And now you can learn more on the same.
Colony in 1793. After the Napoleonic Wars, the Treaty of Paris passed control of the island to Great Britain in 1814, before being reclassified as part of the British Indian Ocean Territory in 1965. The United States' involvement on the island can be traced back to the 1960s, as they recognized the strategic importance of the Indian Ocean region was growing. The Indian Ocean, which stretches from the Persian Gulf and the coast of East Africa to the Malay Archipelago and the shores of Australia, covers more than 70 million square.
And if you look at this particular image and see Africa, see Australia, we all know what happened with the Tasmanians in Australia. Because if you come all the way like this, you leave the east of Africa, get into the Indian Ocean, for example, from Mombasa. When you are in Mombasa, you're actually on the Indian Ocean. Then from that, get into these other island places. Even Zanzibar is actually the island of Tanzania. And from that, go all the way into the Indian Ocean. In the middle here, that is where you will find the archipelago, which is known as the Chagos Island. And then from there, you will also come all the way east, get to Australia. We know that there was the extermination of the Australian, the Aboriginals in Australia, who are black people, originally black. That is the same they also wanted to do in Kenya. They also wanted to come in Kenya and exterminate the Kenyans and also claim it for their own selves. But of course, the Kenyans are actually put in a fight and fought off these British force. But for these small islands, if you brought in a big force and this force actually has guns, they did not stand a good chance. But the kind of inhumanity that was done, people were killed, others were thrown out of the island for them to make a U.S. military government base. And you'll find the U.S. talking about human rights. Human rights is how you get to throw out someone out of their house and get to sell it to someone else for a price or in exchange for another different commodity.
Square kilometers. Today, the nations that border this ocean make up roughly 1/3 of the world's population. Not to mention the fact that these countries are extremely rich in natural resources, as this geographical space contains roughly 62% of the world's proven oil reserves, 35% of its gas, 40% of its gold, 60% of its uranium, and 80% of all the world's diamonds. The Indian Ocean also contains some of the world's most important shipping lanes. Most notably, it is a key transit route for oil from the Persian Gulf to reach consumers around the world. 20% of the world's oil supply and 93% of oil exported from the Persian Gulf transits by tanker through the Strait of Hormuz and off through the Suez Canal, around the Cape of Good Hope, or somewhere east towards Asia. As the British decided to withdraw from major military bases east of the Suez by 1971, there was great fear of a power vacuum of sorts developing within the Indian Ocean. At the same time, the Cold War was already underway, and an increased Soviet presence was already being felt in East Africa and the Gulf of Aden regions. It was at this point that the United States recognized the need to acquire an Indian Ocean base to facilitate local operations. The U.S. Navy recognized the vulnerability of shore-based facilities and instead looked toward the sparsely populated islands of the British Indian Ocean Territory. Although the base today has quite a large amount of infrastructure, the original plan was for a relatively small communication outpost for the Indian Ocean operations. However, as the Cold War progressed, more and more facilities were added, and today,
when I talk about the US really asserting its own power anywhere else around the world, this is an example, a perfect example of that assertion of power on the continent of Africa. But nonetheless, unless African people get to yield power, and of course even have an interest in yielding power, then we might stay here and talk about these challenges that we are facing anywhere around the continent of Africa, because we have not learned how to yield power. And of course, we have not shown any real interest in yielding that particular kind of a power. But nonetheless, we do hope that you are getting to engage with us on our different social media platforms. Like I said, we are on Facebook, which is Black Fire Network. We are also on Instagram, Black Fire Network. You can also get to engage with us right there as well. But I think you get the drift. We shall continue on to more matters. Right now, we shall be focusing on what is happening in the country known as Mali, because in Mali things are looking really, really bleak. In Mali things I would say they are looking really, really bleak. And apart from that, before we get into Mali, let me share one more video about Chagos and also the kind of atrocities that have been done by the UK and the US, who are the brigaders, or what do you call them, the proponents of human rights.
Get arrested with policemen, but they never give up because they want to express the message to the world, because life was very wonderful there. In 1983, we created Chagos Services Group with the main objective to work for the welfare of Sagosian community and to encourage our youngs to have a better education. In 1990, I was invited by UNDP in a seminar. I still remember the focus was on Universal Declaration of Human Rights. I was focused on
this Universal Declaration of Human Rights is actually a con, and in as much as you might think, that the US is worried about what is happening with China, I would say this is actually also a big fallacy in that regard. But nonetheless, family, I want to take us all the way into what is happening in Mali. I understand that in Mali things are not looking any good, simply because there has been the continuation of the role by the military in Mali. And I always keep on saying that in Mali, we do have what we know as the military junta in Mali. So exactly what is going on is that, let me just share with us, the Bamako residents, there has been some sanctions imposed on Mali. And these sanctions have to do with people being able to travel. These are sanctions that have been put in place by Ecowas. And these are actually bringing up many challenges. These sanctions, which actually, have actually been imposed because of the delay for the restoration of the civilian rule in the country, which is currently being led by the military junta. And of course, today, the Ecowas did act as a club. And this club is working against Africa. That was, of course, some of the things that have been said by the residents. Let me show you what is happening in this particular country in regards to the people and the reaction to the imposition of sanctions in their own country. Let me show you. These include trade embargoes. They also include a freeze on the state assets, and therefore not many people can be able to.
The residents of Mali's capital Bamako, have reacted with indignation to the latest package of sanctions imposed to the country by Ecowas. The new sanctions include border closures, a trade embargo, and a freeze on state assets. Many do not agree with these decisions. Today, Ecowas acts as a club, and this club is working against Africa, against the West African people, so we do not agree with these decisions.
avec cette décision. Ça ne surprend pas.
This is not surprising. Ecowas is currently a union of states, and since 2012 we have been under embargo.
Faire le bras de fer avec la CEDEAO, c'est pas bien parce que
to arm wrestle with Ecowas is not good because today we are already facing sanctions. We do not know where this will lead our country.
Deuxième point.
Secondly, if Mali is to be freed, I think that this arm wrestling is necessary for the freedom of Mali. The new sanctions have been imposed over delays to the restoration of civilian rule.
And how do you see that woman is full of fire? You know, when she's talking about it, she's talking about it with very, very much passion, talking about her own country, which is Mali. And Mali is actually right now is like under siege, you know. ECOWAS is the economic community for West African states, and ECOWAS is the bloc that actually fosters trade amongst West African countries. When I talk about West African countries, I'm talking about Nigeria, I'm talking about countries such as Ghana, I'm talking about countries such as Ivory Coast. In all these countries right now, most of them are actually in a political kind of it's like an impasse when it comes to the continent, the West African part of the continent. And therefore, what I would actually suggest for me as a person, because I would also like to engage with you, what do you think is a long-lasting solution for this impasse that is on in terms of West Africa? We do have the military junta who took over, and right now these sanctions are being put in place because they have been unable to move from the military into the civilian role, which is a democratic role. And therefore, the US government recently, they removed Mali from the list of countries that can be able to access the benefits from the AGOA, which is a trade, which actually gives them more access to trade without different kinds of restrictions or barriers. But we talked about it. We did have Guinea, Mali, and Ethiopia being kicked out of the AGOA Pact. And this particular AGOA Pact, like I did say, is really a pact that would actually enable more African, more continents, more countries on the continent to be able to derive the benefits from what we call the African Growth and Opportunity Act. This was enacted in 2000. It was actually enacted so that they could actually allow sub-Saharan African countries to improve economic relations between themselves and also United States, and also getting access to different markets in the USA, duty-free markets in the USA. But of course, Mali right now, apart from the ECOWAS sanctions, Mali is also facing these other sanctions that have to do with the AGOA Pact. And like I did tell you, when it comes to the continent of Africa, if a country that you want to do business with on the continent of Africa is not under the AGOA Pact, you will have a lot of difficulties with that. And even if you're coming on the continent of Africa and you intend to start businesses, you also have to look at the corruption index. The corruption index by an organization known as Transparency International that would also tell you this country is ranking very, very high in terms of corruption. And therefore, you would not want to put your investment in a place where you know your investment might not come back. You know, you have a poor rate of return on investment simply because of corruption in a country like that. But nonetheless, family, I would also like to urge us to also educate or inform ourselves or enlighten ourselves about the investment opportunities in different African countries. Perhaps you would want to invest in a country where we do have better infrastructure. And when I'm talking about infrastructure, I am talking about better roads, better connectivity, better internet. I'm talking about things like road transport, rail transport, and water or sea transport, which will enable you to move your goods very, very easy. Because trade is about the movement of people and goods. And if your goods cannot move freely, for example, in the DRC Congo, they have not invested heavily on infrastructure because of the fighting in that particular country. And therefore, every other minute that you hear about the DRC Congo, they have resources. They almost have everything that you need to get going. But when it comes to infrastructure, electricity, the roads, the airports, and the seaports, you will not have that in a good condition. And therefore, you might not be drawn to a country like that. But on the continent, Rwanda is trying to give opportunities for investment. Kenya is trying. Kenya is riddled by corruption, but Kenya be trying. We do have South Africa, which is also trying, riddled with corruption. But Kenya, Rwanda, and Tanzania, for me, I think make it at the top there. Rwanda and Tanzania, they make it at the top there. And you should be able to do your research on the same. When it comes to West African countries, Mali, Ivory Coast, Burkina Faso, Niger, and all these other countries right there, they are not really, really wonderful for the investment at the moment. Also for Central African countries, the Central African Republic and countries such as Chad, these are also at the moment no-go places for you to be able to do any investment in those countries because the lack of security, political stability, and also the matter of the economics not doing any good. Zimbabwe is well positioned in terms of resources, but they are not well positioned in terms of structures in the economy that would allow for foreign investment to come in the country and also thrive. So that is why I always do say Rwanda, Tanzania, Kenya is also doing well. I think I would rank Kenya that. And from there, we can have other countries. Ethiopia would also come in number 4, but Ethiopia right now, there's a lot of fighting. And therefore, if you're looking at opportunities on the continent of Africa, please make sure you have the opportunity to travel to those countries and also do your research. Right now, I'm saying Tanzania and also Rwanda, they are doing relatively very, very well. And relatively well compared to other countries. They are doing relatively well compared to other countries. But when it comes to countries such as the Central African Republic, Chad, talk about Burkina Faso, talk about Ivory Coast, talk about Benin, Togo, all these countries, I would not really ask anyone to do their research or their quest to visiting these countries. Right now, we do have the Black Fire Network family. They are in Tanzania. If you have not caught up with what Sister Nish, Sister Joby, and also Kate are doing in Tanzania, and make sure you check out this same channel and you will see what's going on. There are many investment opportunities in Tanzania, in Dar es Salaam. Apart from Dar es Salaam, we also do have Arusha, we do have Mwanza, we do have Dodoma. When you go to the neighboring country, which is Rwanda, we do have Kigali, and we also do have other different regions in Rwanda where you can also consider, or you can also research on trying to maybe repatriate on the continent and invest in. Like I said, Kenya is also wonderful. We do have Nairobi, we do have Mombasa, we do have Nakuru, we do have Eldoret, and other different regions where you can also decide to go and inquire and find, a second home on the continent. Because I do believe right now the USA is a crumbling nation. You cannot tell me about the USA really going into its better days or really going back to its former glory. You cannot tell me about that. I know right now it's a crumbling nation, just like any other empire. The Roman Empire failed. We do have many other empires that have failed. Even the Kemetic empires in Egypt, they failed, and therefore you cannot tell me that right now, the US is having its better days. It's going back to its days of glory, like Trump was talking about, make America great again. You can have all those nice phrases, catch phrases, make America great again, take it as to the old days and all these other things. There's nothing like going back to the old days. You have to strap up and find out. And also just buckle up. I was looking for that name, not strap up, but you can also strap up. Also in buckle up, be ready, and also look for options. And I would say on the continent of Africa, the ALC options where you can also look at investing, and also your dollar goes much more further. And the Black Fire Network has been conducting tours to the continent. In 2019, there was a tour to Rwanda. In 2020, there was a tour to Tanzania. Also in 2018, we had a tour to Uganda. And we are here on the ground, even in Kenya. So you cannot have an excuse saying you do not have real people on the ground, because I understand it's very, very important for you to have a connection on the ground, and also for you to be able to establish a working relationship with the family on the continent, and from there build up with them. We are here for you. In case you want to shoot me an email, simply feel free to do so. You can email blackfireafrica@gmail.com. Send through a question, send through a comment, send through a suggestions, question, comments, whatever you might feel free. You can email me direct on blackfireafrica@gmail.com, and I will be glad to hear from you. In case you need some materials researched for you, we shall be glad to research on them for you. In case you need some questions, some help with some questions answered for you, exactly, we are here for you, and we shall be able to do much more with you, and through collaboration and cooperation with you, we shall be able to do much more for our people globally. For everyone that has been supporting the Black Fire Network, much peace and love to you too. We appreciate you. And in case you haven't checked us out on our official website, it's www.blackfirenetwork.com. Please feel free to visit us. And like I said, also feel free to drop us an email. It's blackfireafrica@gmail.com. We will be happy to hear from you, and also let us know how you are coping and what are your expectations for this year 2022. Let us know, and also let us know how we can also get to collaborate and also cooperate in terms of bringing that weekend, and also repatriating our people back to the continent, and also in terms of building back ourselves as a people to the place of global prominence. Right now, any place you go in the world, you'll find Africans being at the bottom. but that is not our place. That is not our original place. We need back to work on getting back to a place of global prominence. And that was what was happening with the Kemet people, land of the blacks. In Kemet, you would find all sorts of civilization in Kemet. Actually, if you were to tell the people of Kemet that right now, maybe about 1,000 years later, that we would be here, they would simply actually just be looking at you crazy, because they knew that they were actually the people who are dominating everything. And that is where we need to get back to when we work together, when we have a proper understanding. I believe we can be able to get back to that particular place where we need to be. But for now, I want to wish you a happy and productive remaining part of the day. This has been a 54 corresponding show on the Black Hot Fire Network. For anyone that spent a minute or two just tuning in or catching up with us, we do say asanteni sana, which is Swahili, and that simply means we thank you so much. In case you want to support the Black Hot Fire Network, feel free to do so. You can use Cash App, Mr. Black Hot Fire, or you can also use the Black Hot Fire Network website. Till next time, much peace and love. Make sure you join us on the Africa Today show a little bit later on, where we get to discuss different issues as well. For now, I want to say kwaheri. I'll catch you next time, and I want to say kwaheri.